The Day of Thirst is the name traditionally given in Arabic historiography to a battle fought in 724 between the Turkic-Turkish Khaganate and the Umayyad Caliphate on the banks of the river Jaxartes. In Transoxian, the Umayyad army, under Muslim ibn Sa'id al-Kilabi, was campaigning in the Fergana Valley when it learned of the Turkish advance. Immediately, the Arabs began a hasty retreat to the Jaxartes, pursued and harassed by the Turkish cavalry. Finally, after 11 days, the Umayyad army reached the Jaxartes, where it was caught between the Turkish and the forces of the native Transoxianian principalities. Nevertheless, the Arabs managed to break through and cross the river to Kujand. The Umayyad defeat led to the collapse of Muslim rule over much of the region, which until California, 740 remained disputed territory, with both the Arabs and the Turkish fighting for control over it. Background: the region of Transoxiana had been conquered by the Umayyad leader Qutayba ibn Muslim in the reign of Al-Walid I. Following the Muslim conquests of Persia and Khorasan in the mid-7th century, the loyalties of Transoxiana's native Iranian and Turkic populations and those of autonomous local rulers remained questionable, however, as demonstrated in 719, when the Transoxianian princes sent a petition to the Chinese and their Turkish vassals for military aid against the Caliphate's governors. The Turkish responded by launching a series of attacks against the Muslims in Transoxiana, beginning in 720. These incursions were coupled with uprisings against the Caliphate among the local Sogdians. The Umayyad governor of Khorasan, Sa'id ibn Amr al-Harashi, harshly suppressed the unrest and restored the Muslim position almost to what it had been during the time of Qutayba, except for the Fergana Valley, control over which was lost. Expedition against Fergana and the Day of Thirst. In 723, al-Harashi was replaced as governor by Muslim ibn Sa'id al-Kilabi, who resolved late the next year to launch an expedition with the goal of seizing Fergana. The campaign faced difficulties already in its early stages, when the news arrived of the accession of a new caliph, Hisham ibn Abd al-Malik, and the appointment of a new governor of Iraq, Khalid al-Kashri. Expecting Muslims' imminent recall by the new regime, the Yemeni troops in Balkh initially refused to join the campaign, but were forced to join the army when a force composed of Mudaris under Nasser ibn Sayyid marched against them and defeated them at Baru Khan. The campaign eventually went ahead as Khalid al-Kashri wrote to al-Kilabi, urging him to proceed with it until his replacement, Khalid's brother Asad, arrived in Khorasan. Nevertheless, 4,000 troops from the Yemeni Azd tribe withdrew from the army. Al-Kilabi led his army along the Jaxartes Valley to Fergana, and laid siege to it while devastating the surrounding countryside. At this point, the Umayyad army became aware that the Turkish Khagan Suluk was advancing against him with a stronger army. Abandoning their advance, the Muslim army retreated so hastily towards the south that it was claimed they covered a distance in one day that equaled 3 days of normal travel. On the second day, after the Arabs crossed the river Wadi al-Sabur, the Turkish army caught up with them, and attacked a secondary camp pitched by Abdullah ibn Abi Abdullah separately from the main Arab force. The Arabs and their Sogdian allies suffered heavy casualties, the brother of the ruler of Samarkand, Gurak, being among the slain, but managed to repel the attack. The Arabs continued their retreat for 8 more days, during which they were constantly harassed by the Turkish cavalry. On the 9th day, the Arabs reached the Jaxartes only to find their path blocked by their enemies. Troops of the native principalities of Shash and Fargana, and the remnants of the Sogdian rebellion Sa'id al-Harashi had suppressed. The Arabs made camp for the night and burned all their baggage, allegedly worth 1 million dirhams, in preparation for battle. On the next day, despite suffering from thirst and being hemmed in between the Turkish on their rear and the Transoxianian forces in front, The desperate Arabs managed to break through the enemy lines and cross the Jaxartes. As al-Tabari writes, when they reached the relative safety of Kujand, suffering from hunger and exhaustion, the troops spread out in disorder. Aftermath and impact. The defeat of the Arab army, and the casualties suffered, was a catalyst for the almost complete collapse of Muslim rule in Transoxiana over the next few years. In the words of the British scholar H.A.R. Gibb, it was practically the last aggressive expedition of the Arabs into Transoxania for 15 years. But of much greater importance was the blow which it struck at Arab prestige. The roles were reversed. From now onwards the Arabs found themselves on the defensive and were gradually ousted from almost every district across the Oxus. The new Umayyad governor, Asad al-Kashri, campaigned incessantly over the next few years, but without achieving any major result. Assad also tried to secure the cooperation of the local elites by abolishing for a time the payment of taxes by the native converts. But this policy was opposed by the Khurasani Arabs themselves, and was reversed by Assad's successor Ashras ibn Abdullah al-Sulami. This led to a general uprising of Transoxiana in 728, and with Turkish military aid the Arabs were evicted from almost the entire region. Transoxiana thereafter remained contested, and the Arabs did not recover their previous position until the campaigns of Nasser ibn Sayyah in 739–741, who took advantage of the collapse of the Turkish Khaganate into civil wars after the murder of Suluk in 738.